The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and so thrilled to have her here on this lovely summer morning. Good morning. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Graham-Pichet, she's a true expert in the field of autism, I believe, the preeminent expert in the field of autism. But beyond that, I always like to remind all of us and her that she's a visionary in this field. She's been working in this field for more than 30 years. I know I usually go 30 years. Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to it turning 40. It'll be a couple of years.
Well, that's amazing. And only someone whose skin is as good as yours would look forward to saying, I've been working in this field for 40 years.
The horrible thing about, I love, you know how much I love doing this show with you, but if it is documentation of the past 5 years of our lives, Shannon, you know, and if you go back to some of the early years, I'm like, good Lord, like the last 5 years have been tough.
Can I just talk about the last 5 months? I'm doing a PowerPoint right now about Autism Live, and I was taking clips from different things to pop into the PowerPoint. And there was one, I put on a little weight recently, and oh, was it noticeable. It was like Shannon has eaten a small village. Looking at 5 months ago and looking at now, I was like, hello.
Oh, it's so hard.
Got to get it together. And I'm going to try to get it together this summer. But starting now. But it really, yes, it does. I went, whoo. And of course, it's embarrassing. And I apologize to everyone who's watching, but we have not changed the opener to the show. So it still has me 5 years ago with dark curly hair. Oh. And people watch it now. I had a little niece who watched it and said, who's that?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Well, it's time to change the opener, isn't it? A long time ago.
That's funny.
But yes, it does document in the best possible ways and in the most humbling ways.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In any case, it points out too the amount of time that you've donated over the last 5 years to be able to speak to our families and the people who are. I shouldn't say it isn't always parents who write in. Sometimes it's teachers. Sometimes it's grandparents. Sometimes it's practitioners in the field of autism. And we welcome all of you in this format to ask the questions. We do give the disclaimer that there is no expert in this field or any other medical field that could give individual specific advice in this format. It just doesn't lend itself to that because you don't, even at the level of expertise that you're at, you need to, have more time, know more back history, have an opportunity to see the person.
To be fair, that's right. To be able to give relevant responses, that's right. It's important.
So no individual specific advice, but what we get is great information that is general in nature that helps, I think, all of us to be able to know what the next question is, what the next course of action is, and it prepares you when you are talking to an expert to know what to ask next, and saves time. And and honestly, we get the best education at your feet, and that's a really good use of time. So thrilled that you're here. I want to jump in. I promised last week that I would start with this question because I think it's relevant to many of us dealing with summer and electronics and things of that nature. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, my 13-year-old son is home for the summer. He has ASD and is in a self-contained classroom mostly for his problem behaviors, which are escape from demand maintain, so I was told. How can I work on compliance and following a schedule at home? He thinks he can watch TV all day, but I don't want him to. He is pretty strong, so I'm not sure how I can get him to follow my instructions with just telling him. Any guidance is greatly appreciated.
Of course. And let's just start and let's not anticipate. I read some anticipation of, apprehension, I would say, in this question, because it sounds like you're worried about placing any demands. So let's just start and see how things go. And I think what you should do is put together a visual schedule. My recommendation is make it very light. So start with, as usual, what I suggest is to start with very minimal demands, high reinforcers, and then gradually change that so that the child doesn't become reactive or even aware. So what I would do is I would just take a baseline and look and see, like, what do you feel is an appropriate time for your son to wake up, as opposed to when does he actually wake up? And start with when he wakes up as the baseline. Let's say, I don't know, he's a teen, so let's say 10:30, 11, who knows? And then let's say for you, it would be more appropriate for him to wake up at 9. So right now, it's perfectly fine for him to wake up at 11. Over the course of the next, let's say, 2 months or 2.5 months, whatever summer you have, you're going to shoot for him waking up, 5-minute increments earlier. And that's all you really do. You wake him up at, 10:55, then 2 days later at 10:50, then a day later at 10:45, and so on and so forth. And you gradually get to where you want to go. Now, that's just his waking. For the rest of his day, you just do a visual schedule of, okay, you wake up, you have X amount of time to have breakfast, and then you have, let's say, certain activities. You need to come up with those activities. Now, I don't know anything about your child's functioning level or what you mean when you said he's home for the summer, which would imply that he might be somewhere else the rest of the year. So please figure out a schedule that does not involve too much demand. So initially, maybe, let's say if you're scheduling between 11 a.m. and, I don't know, let's say he goes to sleep at 9 p.m., then you have roughly 10 hours of time to schedule. Make sure that in the beginning he has a lot more free time. So of the 10 hours, perhaps you want to do, I don't know, like 1 hour of some sort of physical activity initially, followed by a whole hour of watching TV, followed by, let's say, an hour of something mind, practice, like whether it's academic or something else, followed by a whole nother hour of TV or whatever is his reinforcer. Let's allow, there's a couple of things about summer. One is, it is summer. Like, sometimes we think about summer and we think about, oh, let's just use this to catch my child up or pack them with whatever I can. And the truth is, your child also needs a little bit of a break. So it's perfectly fine. It's not like you're, doing anything negative or bad to allow him to have a little bit of time off. So, while I agree you don't want your child sitting in front of the TV for 3 months straight, you do want him getting out and so forth. Figure out the things you absolutely need from him. So like a certain level of physical activity, a certain level of maybe mental activity, a certain level of social activity, and then infuse them into the day with a high level of reinforcer. Now, his reinforcer might be watching TV, it might be something else, I don't know, but put those in so it's a very reinforcement-rich schedule. And then you can gradually increase your demands a little bit and reduce the reinforcers. But, again, keep in mind that this is the summer and it's perfectly okay for your child to have more reinforcers than he would during the normal year. And then all I can suggest is if you want to teach new activities and new skills, think of things that he doesn't really have the opportunity to do over the course of the year. Like teach him making a sandwich, like basic cooking stuff. Teach him like a craft maybe, or a musical instrument, or things that or painting, something that he might not engage in during the course of the year, and try to make it more of an interesting and fun activity, perhaps with you. a lot of times our kids will definitely do stuff with us if we have the time. And the reason that they've started to like turn to TV as a reinforcer is just because we often don't have time for them.
Yeah. I want to say too that there's a big meme that started on Pinterest and then it kind of made its way to Facebook that people have been posting that's neurotypical parents, but they show this, here's what you have to do each day before you get screen time. And it's a checklist, and there are 6 or 7 of them that are out there. And it's meant for kids that are neurotypical. It definitely would have to be changed for each one of our kids. But it reminded me that this is something that everybody is dealing with, that all of our kids are drawn to the screen, whether it's the TV, the phone, or their computer, or the video game thing. And it was, I think Nancy and I are going to try to have time to talk about this in the next hour, about how you customize that for a kiddo on the autism spectrum. But Jem and I sat down together and made a schedule that he didn't entirely agree with me on some of the things on it. That one of the things on his list is that he has to spend 20 minutes doing something musical, and he was like, well, I don't want you to legislate that. I like doing that. I don't want it to have to be a requirement. I said, let's just try it for a week. He's had such a ball on the piano.
Right.
And and I pointed out to him that the things on the list are not all, because on the neurotypical list it was do chores, it was these kinds of things, and I think that has to be shifted for our kids that are on the spectrum. But because my son has to be reminded there are things that you enjoy besides screen time, and once he's doing them, he really enjoys them. So we're going to try to talk more about that later.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, Shannon. And I think also, like, we often refer to these, what I call adaptive skills or daily living skills, as chores.
Yeah.
And that puts a negative connotation on them to begin with. And it's kind of like, I'm reminded of like Little House on the Prairie, have you done your chores?
Yeah.
It's a different thing. It's like some of this stuff is teaching our kids to live independently, And especially for our kids on the spectrum, it's really important for them to actually learn those chores, because that is learning how to live independently. And some of it is fun, my daughters have always accompanied me on like grocery shopping and cooking and stuff like that, so they're both very capable in that area, whereas my son has never really, he's the one that empties the car, but it's like he hasn't learned a lot of stuff just by being around for that. So these are things that are important too, and so think of it that way, and it can be quite enjoyable.
Yes. I think part of what spurred the conversation between Nancy and I is that my son's been out of school for 2 weeks, and as he was doing his last week, I was like, oh, thank goodness, I can't wait until he's out of school. And I think today is Wyatt's last day, and Nancy's been like, oh no.
That's right.
And I've said, oh, we got to talk about this. And she said,
That's
why
right.
do you love the summer so much? And I said, because we get to make our own schedule. We get to be the captains of what's happening, and I don't have to be on. I love school, and I love when my son is in school, but I'm on somebody else's timeline.
Exactly.
And that's a drag.
It is.
I love being
absolutely.
I love setting the schedule. And we usually, in years past, we had a visual schedule.
That's right.
Now he has it on his phone in
There you
notes. But and he gets to check off and he gets to choose when he does those things. He can do it the night before or the morning of,
Right.
and report to me. So this can be customized for our kiddos in lots of different ways. But
That's right.
I definitely think they've got to have some free time, and they have to have some guidelines about how much of the screen time.
That's right.
Because we will lose them down that rabbit hole. All right, I'm moving on to the next question. Good morning. My son has ASD and is going into 5th grade next year. He really struggles in school with starting his work and has a lot of escape behaviors to get out of pretty much all subjects. He's very goal-oriented outside of the classroom and loves making up quests to achieve with his activities. He likes bike riding, video games. How can we translate this drive to achieve to the classroom? He also has a major anxiety over any type of test that is timed. He will know the material, but as soon as he finds out that it has a time limit, he shuts down, and thank you.
Yeah, so, this is, first of all, let me just say how much I love that our viewers all are using behavioral lingo like it's nothing.
Yes.
The first one is like, these are escape maintained, and this one is like, has a lot of escape. I love it. It's great. A lot of our behaviors, our kids' challenging behaviors, are typically escape maintained behaviors, which basically, for those viewers who are not familiar with this terminology, means that the behavior is done in order to escape a demand or some sort of activity that is supposed to be taking place. And it's not uncommon, because our kids don't, you know, like if you think of typically developing kids, they often want to escape things as well, and they just deal with it in other ways, right? They'll
Adults want to escape from things.
Oh my gosh.
We all want to do this.
We all want to escape, that's right. And what happens, I think, a lot of times is that our kids don't know how to manage their schedules well enough so that essentially they, you know, try to do various challenging behaviors to express to us, I want out. This is a very common thing for a child to have figured out, that I don't want to be in the classroom because the classroom is where demands are made. It's almost verbatim what you just said earlier, which is, I kind of want to do my own thing. I want to do my own quests. I don't really want to do the agenda they have in mind for me. But like anything else, the issue here is the same exact thing that we do with every behavior in dealing with using ABA. Essentially, you increase reinforcers and decrease demand, and then the escape behavior will be eliminated. It's always that. So what is it in the classroom that is not reinforcing enough for him? He is not receiving enough reinforcement from that activity. So essentially the question is, how much of what goes on in the classroom can you reduce, and how much of the reinforcers that he receives can you increase? Now, one example that you've brought up is the timing issue. The timing issue is an anxiety issue, and it's very common for a lot of kids. It's not just kids on the spectrum. Anything that is it's common for me. Like, let me just tell you, if I do a game on my phone on an app and it's timed, yeah, I hate it. I absolutely hate anything that's timed. I will always mess it up. I will, if I don't know it's timed, I'll often meet the criteria within the time frame. But when I know it's timed, I cannot stop looking at the timer. It freaks me out. So it's just like, oh my God, minutes are going, you know, it's like, it's tricky. So that you just need to get him used to. And I think the way that you need to do that is like teach him, do some fun activities within time frame, maybe games. Games are good because there's a lot of them that are timed. And just teach him to not pay attention to the timer, but just do the best he can within the course, like just ignore the timer. If he could learn to ignore the timer and be more relaxed within that time frame, then he'll do fine. That is an anxiety issue for sure.
Now, in an IEP process, you can easily put it into your that they aren't timed, that he can have as much time as he wants, and you can tell that to him. And that includes standardized testing too. That's an easy accommodation that can be given. Is that something we should do for somebody who has anxiety?
You know, it depends on the level of anxiety and the level of functioning. So obviously there's two ways to deal with anything. One is you can modify the antecedents. One is you can, you know, shape the behavior to deal with the antecedents. So what you're suggesting is, let's give him the opportunity, let's remove that timer and just give him as much time as he needs. And that could be the right thing for him depending on his skill level. On the other hand, if he's pretty close to being able to handle it like other kids, then I would suggest that you work towards teaching him to be able to work under the contingencies of a timer. You could do a combination as well. You could request more time, but not in, you know, infinite amounts of time. It's really up to you and where the child is. Obviously, our goal always is, there are certain things in society we have to deal with, right? I know my child, my youngest child, for instance, does develop, and last night she had a bunch of anxiety over the fact that she's overloaded, she's overwhelmed, she's got a ton of stuff going on. But the truth of the matter is, I can go in and request additional time for her, but the issue is she also needs to learn to time herself better from the very beginning of the year. And this is a problem many of our teens experience, is just procrastination. And then you freeze because you've procrastinated too long now, and the load is impossible. And that's, you know, we all go through this at some point or another. In fact, I remember having so much, I had learned through my career, you know, through my educational life, of 24 years of studying that how to time myself, right? I had learned how to study so that I would never be overloaded and overwhelmed. You learn that definitely when you're going to a place like UCLA and getting your PhD. You learn to do an adequate amount. And then when I had my first child, Nikki, and she was like in, I don't know, middle school or something, and I saw that she was not doing that. She was falling behind. I remember feeling anxiety for her. Like, I remember it was bringing up, and it still does with me with Charlie. It's like, why do I have so much anxiety over my kids falling behind? And it's because it's like a reminiscence of the past for me. And it's like, you need to learn. So really for this parent, it really has to do with, is it something that you think your child will accomplish? In which case, yes, you want to help them and you want to support them, but you ultimately want to teach them to live with the normal rules of society. Or is it just going to always be too hard? In which case, absolutely. You have a diagnosis, you can ask for timer removal all the way up to through college. So, you know, that is something that you can do definitely.
Okay. And then in terms of, is there, I mean, I love this idea that he loves a quest. And if there's a way that you can get creative, there are apps that do this with chores. We were just talking about doing chores. Right. There are apps that you can do that it makes, you know, you have to, you program in what chore you want them to do. And if they do it a certain number of days, it shows a little character going further towards a thing, towards a reward.
That's right.
That when they get there, and you can specify what the reward is. I'm sure there's something like that for schoolwork too.
Oh, I'm sure there is. And it's really, what you're describing is a basic token economy, right? It's a basic like token chart that we've also taught people how to do, and it's very simple. The amazing thing, the reason our kids love technology is because the reinforcer is built into the activity. It's almost like people who are very good athletes. The reason they become better and better and better is that they have already so much enjoyment out of the actual thing they're doing that additional reinforcers are not necessary. Yeah. They're willing to get up at 6 in the morning and go somewhere and do something every single day because doing it is enjoyable. Now, it's a long shot to think that doing schoolwork is going to be enjoyable. Some of our kids, yeah, some of our kids are just academically so advanced. Honestly, I have kids where their reinforcer is algebra, is sit down and do algebra, that they enjoy it so much. But the truth is, with school, I mean, look at us. No one in there, like, who really enjoys getting up and going and doing massive number of classes, right? It's not something any of us really love. The reason we love going to school is not our class content and our homework, it's because we see our friends. And most of our kids don't really have that bond or relationship, so they're going to hate school, right? In this child's case, it might be very much that he actually is more of a social being and enjoys social behavior much more. But again, I go back to break down the demand. So make the schoolwork less demanding, whether it's duration of schoolwork. So like, instead of forcing him to do 3 hours before recess, have him do an hour and get a break, an hour and get a break. Or in content, which means you modify the content and he doesn't actually have to do as much as everyone else. Or you get him a tutor and you assist on the antecedent side. So whatever you do, those are the ways to help. And then you increase the reinforcer. As you said, for every hour that he completes, he should actually be able to give himself a sticker at the end of the day. If he has X number of stickers, 10 or whatever, he gets to get money. Or he's in 5th grade, you know, give him money so he can actually go and buy something for himself. You know, or give him more video games, or give him something that he really enjoys. And that's just what it is. All of life is about balancing reinforcers and demands.
And even, I just want to point out, because you started the conversation by talking about lower the demands, but that's to begin with. And so lower the demand, make the reward, but eventually you move those things closer together so that you can then eventually take the reward away and it's rewarding on its own.
Well, you never really take the reward completely away. You just make it what is normal society, right? So in normal life, why do we go through school? Why do we go through school?
Well, for some, I think it's different for some people. For some people, it's because getting the good grade feels good to them because of all the attention that parents and grandparents give because of it.
That's right.
And because you get a piece of paper at the end that allows
That's
you
right.
to get a better job.
That's right. I don't think at any point during high school anyone really relates it to a job. It's too far of a reinforcer, you know. I think what it is a number of different things. It's the reinforcement, as you said, of receiving a lot of sort of acknowledgments from your family, perhaps. It's also the reinforcement of it's the reinforcement of avoiding failure. So if you look at, like, a lot of our kids, they're embarrassed amongst their friends or stressed because their friends are getting better grades than they are. That's a major punisher. It's an automatic punishment that's in society. So some of our kids are just motivated because they don't want to be the lowest grade amongst their friends. They want to be like their friends. That's that's peer pressure on the positive end, right? So it's a huge reinforcer for our kids. But I think over the course of time, it becomes a lot more it becomes a lot more like, you know, kids talk about, what grade did you get? What grade did you get? Wow, he got an A. It becomes a lot more the reinforcers of your peer group, as well as the reinforcers of your family still. And then it becomes, you know, once you've finished with high school and so on with typically developing kids, yes, then there's a sense of direction and pride, and I want to accomplish my goals, and just by being able to check off, you know, the next class and the next class towards getting into Columbia or whatever it is, or I'm proud of myself. Self-pride is a very important thing. With our kids, a lot of times it becomes very hard for them to develop that self-pride, because where they're developing their self-pride is somewhere else. Like, for instance, he's really feeling good about himself when he develops a quest in video games. And he's getting so much of the reinforcer out of that and he doesn't. And honestly, it's not just our kids, Shannon, it's this generation as a whole. This generation as a whole has a lot more many more avenues of gaining what they would consider success. So for instance, to me, it's not success if you're a YouTuber. But to them, it is huge success, because these are people making tons of money just going on YouTube and posting whatever they want, and it's great, right? And you know, it even makes me rethink success, and I'm like, maybe you don't really need an education. Maybe you know what I mean? Like, who knows? But the bottom line is, however the individual defines success also defines how they will get reinforcers. Our kids are often, their minds are very different. They have talents in certain areas. They really don't see the value of the stuff that we see value in. So it becomes kind of punitive to them. And you know, there's a million environmental factors. But having said that, we never do anything unless it's reinforced. Now, people who are resilient and hardworking and diligent are people who can handle less reinforcer and more demand. Like, I look at Nikki, my daughter. She works unbelievably hard. She has jobs. She does honors thesis, this and that, and her reinforcer is avoidance of anything below an A-. There
you go.
You know, her biggest punishment is, oh, I didn't get an A in this, you know. And so for her, she's going to always be organized, diligent, and move ahead, because she works really hard for very little reinforcement. But you know, other kids that I know, not to name my own kids, but some they need way more reinforcer for, like, they need a party to be thrown if they get a C. You know what I mean? So.
And as a parent, maybe we don't get bogged down in that, but find how much reinforcer do I need for my kid, and then make that happen, and then gradually over time change that.
Absolutely. And you do the best you can, because sometimes there's just not enough reinforcers in the world for our kids to do what we want them to do.
And I think sometimes we just have that conversation in our head where, well, they should want to do it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a waste of time.
A totally waste of time. And sometimes they want to do so many things, and sometimes they just don't understand that I have to also finish my classwork, and why that is. And it's important. And it's not like you can sit down and reason with any child why they need education. It just doesn't make sense to them when they're younger. But you know, so you have to manipulate the environment, and you have to allow this is Premack again, you have to allow him to do his favorite things only if he does the things that are not favorites. But, you know, allow a lot of the favorites and a few of the demands, and then you can gradually change that.
And I have learned at your feet with this, and I've told the story before on the show that in this last year we gave my son, he really wanted to have his friends over on a Friday afternoon to play video games and live stream. And so as long as his grades were all B's and A's, he got to do that. And my kid worked overtime
To get that.
you know, was on the honor roll every single quarter this
Good for
last
him.
year,
That's
got
amazing.
an award. And, you know, and now that was exciting to him. He was like, I got an award. And I'm so thrilled because he's starting to see the benefits of
That's
doing
right.
that aside from his Friday afternoon crew.
That's right.
But he got there because the reward was the Friday afternoon crew, and he was willing to step over dead bodies
Absolutely.
to get to the Friday afternoon
Absolutely.
crew.
That's fantastic.
So, and that was because, you know, that's what he wanted. So figuring out what your kid wants and marrying it somehow as the reward, boy, I definitely see that that's where it's all at. It's exciting. But it's different for each kid. It's
Absolutely
not
different.
a paint by number. You got to take out your toolbox and figure out your kid and be
Definitely.
creative and experiment. We should take a break, and then we're going to come back with more of your questions. So stick with us for more Ask Dr. Doreen.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. Today I have a special guest with me. What the heck? She's missing.
Here I am!
And what's your name?
Mackenzie,
And what are we doing today?
making sidewalk paint.
And how do we do that?
I have no idea.
So, the materials we'll be needing
Are 2 cups of cornstarch, 1 cup of cold water, 4.5 cups of boiling water. Be careful. A mixing bowl, a spoon, sparkle, and food coloring.
So, the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna take our 2 cups of cornstarch and put it in the big bowl.
Yes.
Can you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's alright, I'll help you. Step 2, you're gonna put the cold water into the bowl.
Cold water to the bowl.
Good job. Step 3, we're gonna stir it with a big spoon. Good job. You're gonna keep stirring it until it's all the way mixed together. So the next step is adding the boiling water. That's a little dangerous for her, so I'll be doing it myself, 1 cup at a time, stirring it together. You're gonna keep an eye on me?
Yes.
So once we're done stirring the cornstarch water, we're gonna start making our dyed paint. So what
Yeah.
are we gonna do?
We're gonna put in the dye,
Okay.
and we're gonna put it in the sparkles.
All right, let's do it. I'll move this out of the way. All right, it's all you, Mackenzie. So the more food coloring you use, the brighter it's gonna be.
Ooh.
So let's put the sparkles in.
Now we're gonna put the cornstarch in the jar.
All right, do you wanna stir that up?
It looks pretty. We're gonna make a few more colors, and we're gonna go paint outside.
See all the colors in the sky tonight.
Are you excited?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Love is the truest state of mind. Now can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet for Ask Dr. Doreen, and she's answering your questions in real time. We had a question that came in on Facebook, from YouTube. My brother is 15 years old and was diagnosed with mental retardation and autism. He still can't use the bathroom and doesn't speak. He is also having epilepsy and on epileptic medications and risperidone. He is also having trouble sleeping. He won't sleep enough hours, nor will he fall asleep easily. And that's the sum total of what was written. There's, there are questions in there, but there's no obvious question. Where do we start?
Oh my gosh, and I just my heart goes out to this person, so I really wanted to just be able to help them if any possible way, because there's so much going on in their life.
Yes.
And I guess, Shannon, sometimes when you read these texts or emails or whatever they are, it shows us the extent of what some people are dealing with. This is not even a parent.
Yeah.
This is a sibling who's writing in, and I'm just for a moment thinking of this individual's life and thinking, okay, this is a brother who is 15, has ASD and MR and epilepsy, and is and no sleep.
Right.
And is on risperidone. So that means they have a lot of different behaviors. And I'm guessing this individual probably has aggression, which is why they're on something like risperidone.
Yeah.
I guess the short version of my response is you alone can't really help this. When we talk about some of our 3- and 4-year-olds and we say it takes a village,
Yeah.
we're talking when you're at this age and you have so many different issues going on, it takes a city, a big city to help. And I think what you need to do is focus your energy on trying to first develop a team for yourself. And it's wonderful of you that you are trying to help your sibling, but I think you should also, I don't know where your parents are in the game, but right now you should probably try to get a team of other people that might be dedicated to your sibling. Whether they are parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins, perhaps, maybe 3 or 4 people, and then you all sit together and you discuss this as a project, because there's so much to be done here. And some of the different projects are, how do we get his sleep under control? How do we teach him some skills? And how do we make sure that the epilepsy is under control? So the sleep portion is pretty easy to deal with. There are really good homeopathic and pretty benign medications like melatonin that you can take, or that will help him with sleep. The epilepsy is very important that you be consulting with a good physician to maintain that under control, because every time we have a seizure, a lot of our kids lose skills when they have seizures. So it's really important to maintain that under control. And then hopefully, if you are able to, the MR and the mental retardation ASD means nothing. It just means that you got to be familiar with the symptoms of ASD. But other than that, a good place to start would be training yourself and the team. And there I would recommend going to IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, and their website is ibehavioraltraining.com. And if you go there and you start learning about how to handle challenging behaviors, what is autism to begin with, how do we deal with it, and what are some of the goals, and then you can go on Skills, which is our other website, and there you can actually answer a lot of questions about your sibling so that you can get a profile of all the different things to teach. You don't even have to really go that far initially. If you just get the training from IBT, you'll learn so much about autism that you'll be able to list the challenging behaviors. And really what you should all do is list challenging behaviors, and those are the things you want to reduce, and list skill deficits, and those are the things you want to increase. And all you really do is you use those techniques that you learn in IBT to make that happen. You want to reduce certain behaviors like, I don't know, hitting, tantruming, whatever, aggression, self-aggression, running away, whatever it is, and you want to increase certain skills like communication and social behavior and attendance and patience and waiting and new skills, just learning things, content. And so you manage those two things, and if you have a team and you all train together, honestly, you'll be able to do this. It is possible. It's just not possible for one person. And I'm not even saying one person, you. I'm saying me. If it was me and someone gave me right now a 15-year-old with MRASD, epilepsy, and sleep disorder, I don't think I would be able to handle it. I would, given the rest of my life. So I really, really recommend that you build a team first and that you all try to work together to try to learn some stuff. It'll also help you because I would imagine you need some support and your family needs some help and support as well.
And depending on the state that you're in, it's very likely that your brother is covered by insurance.
Mm-hmm. I was imagining them to be international. I don't know why.
Oh, interesting. But you know, it's very possible that there are things in place to help you to get some of the funding to be able to start the team.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes that's a thing as
Absolutely
well. And if
right.
you want to write to us and tell us where exactly you are, I can hook you up with some people who will understand what the resources are in wherever you are in the world. And
Definitely.
that's open to everybody. You can email me at s.penrod, Penrod, at autism hyphen, that's the dash, the line in the middle, live, live.com. And thank you for writing in and for being such a good sibling.
Mm-hmm.
I want to continue on with a question about a 3-year-old. My son is 3, recently diagnosed with autism and is verbal. He had a speech evaluation done. Why the school speech therapist who said he did not qualify for speech therapy? Most of the time I can only understand about half of what is said, and a stranger can interpret maybe 30% or so. Someone mentioned an iPad with a communication app, but I don't want him to rely on that and stop speaking altogether. He stopped altogether last summer and we never understood why. Should I try a communication device? He has aggressive behaviors and meltdowns frequently, which I think might be due to not being able to communicate well. What should we do? And thank you very much. I find this very frustrating that now speech and language pathologists have moved into this place where so many of the kids that they're getting have autism and are nonverbal that, you know, when it used to be in days past, if somebody wasn't even on the spectrum and if they were speaking but it wasn't intelligible, they were speech. You got to get speech so that we can understand, because if people can't understand you, you get frustrated, and why would you take the time and energy to speak if it doesn't get you the response?
That's right.
And now all of a sudden schools are saying, oh no, your kid is verbal, they don't need speech and language. They'll figure it out on their own apparently.
Yeah.
It makes me want to run screaming through the streets.
It's horrible. It's terrible. And I wanted to kind of refocus this parent and say your focus right now is not should not be, and I know it's hard to hear this, but your focus right now should not be what kind of app or communication device or whatever I find for my child. Your focus should be going after the school and forcing them to actually give your child services. Now, speech, even if you get speech services right now, which you should, if your child is 50% unintelligible, you should, and I don't know why they said he's not eligible. But my point is that even if you get the services, the speech services, the maximum you will get is 3 hours a week. The maximum. Probably 2 of those 3 hours will be group. Now that is not enough for your child to overcome whatever it is that he's experiencing right now. What he really needs, he's 3 years old and he is the perfect candidate. If he's 3 years old and verbal, he is the perfect candidate for a child who has the most positive outcome with intensive, comprehensive ABA, applied behavior analysis. So what you need to do, depending on where you live in the United States, is that you need to focus on getting your child right now a 40-hour ABA program. If you get a 40-hour ABA program, I'm not even concerned about speech, because the speech and language work will occur within the context of your ABA program. Now, how do you get that ABA program? You will need to either go after insurance, which will be your first course, and you should have no problem. If your child has ASD and is 3 years old, you will have no problem getting at least 2 years of 40 hours a week of ABA. So that's your first point. If you can't get insurance due to whether you're not covered or you're in a state that still doesn't mandate it or whatever it is, then you need to follow up with your school through an IEP and talk to them about the Free and Appropriate Education Act, which says they need to fund ABA in order for your child to be able to actually receive the appropriate education that he or she needs. So one way or another, you need to get the funding, and that's where your focus should be. And if you have more questions about that, write into us.
Yeah.
We can always help guide you if we know where you are.
There are some states too where you can get a type of insurance. If you don't have the right insurance, you can purchase the right insurance, and it's expensive,
right.
but it's a lot less expensive than paying for a
for it
baby.
yourself.
So that might be something to have a conversation about as
And
well. But please
you've
feel
had some lawyers on this show, I think, talk about getting funding. Have you not? Or
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways. People are being very creative. It's a very interesting time we live in because there are a group of people who have the funding and are taking their kids and getting the therapy, and their kids are flying.
Yes.
There are a group of people who are taking their kids, don't know what they have, and going, 15 hours is enough. And I want to find each and every one of those people, knock on their door and say, let's have a talk.
Yeah.
Because they're ruining it for everyone else.
Right.
Because they're not really getting their kids the kind of help that they need, and they're preventing insurance paying for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the statistics come out and go, it helped some of the kids, it didn't help others.
That's what I've been
You're
saying.
messing it up for everybody.
That's what I've been saying for so many years, Shannon, is that, it's like taking a medication that's been approved for 40 milligrams and taking it at 20.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to help some kids and it's not going to help others. And then the FDA will turn around and say, oh, this medication doesn't really work. Guess what? ABA doesn't work unless it's done the appropriate number of hours.
Full prescription.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you can achieve somewhat with every additional hour, but you're just not going to get to the highest output for your child, the highest capability of your child. And after your child hits a certain age, let's say 6 or 7, A, the brain is not that malleable after 7. B, there's no research that supports comprehensive 40-hour programs after age 7. And C, as a result of that, insurance companies will not fund you comprehensively anymore. It's only before age 6 or 7 that you have an opportunity to get these 40 hours. And you only really have it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because research, again, there's just not enough research. Now, deep down, do I know that 40 hours is going to help everyone forever? Yes, I do. But there's no science behind, there's no research published to say, oh, a child who receives 40 hours for 5 years does better than one that receives it for 2 years.
Right.
And unless that sort of stuff is published, we can't really go back and force the payers to pay it. So value the fact that your child is 3, and if you have coverage, please, I'm begging you to get 40 hours and get it today.
Do the full prescription. But then the next category of people are people who are left out in the cold because they either
have
have
nothing.
insurance, but it's self-funded, so they don't have it, and they're looking at the other people going, you're seriously not using all your hours, and they want to shake them. And they're in this in-between space. But I think that a lot of the people in that in-between space are really buying a vowel and saying, how can I pursue this? And the squeaky wheels are getting coverage. They're writing
of
letters
course.
to their insurance company saying, really? Because, I'm going to have a lawsuit against you later on.
Absolutely.
To show that you did this wrong. And case by case, people are getting funding for that.
Yeah.
They're finding lawyers, and we have lawyers who have taken on some of those cases to pursue and say that their child deserve it. They're finding very creative ways. They're paying for insurance on the side. But I have said from the beginning, and this is what was said to me when I first met the family who got me started at CARD, was they said, make up your mind that you're going to do this no matter what. And then as the obstacles come, you go, look, it's an obstacle. I know what to do with this. I got to go over, under, around, through, but I'm not stopping. And the parents that do that get what their kids need, and those are always the ones who have mental health later. It's hard. I don't think they have mental health during, because that's off the table. But I always said, I want to be able to stand there when my son is done with school and say, we did everything.
Yeah.
And if I can say that later on, then my head will be okay and my gut will be okay. Totally. If I go, I chimped out on this, or I'm not living with that. I'm not doing that.
That's
Just
right.
make up your mind.
And I think it is that same attitude, Shannon, that makes you be a parent who's excited about the summer. Because really what happens is when you are, it's pretty much the same thing we're talking about with regards to our kids and homework. It's like either you're behind the wave or you're ahead of it. And, with parents, when they make the decision and the commitment to do this over and beyond everything else, they get it done. It's like anything else. When you do make the commitments to the child and you say, I'm going to get through whatever obstacles, I'm going to make this happen, and you are ahead of the wave and you can actually make it happen because now it's in your hands. you can schedule things and coordinate it and make it happen. And sometimes when we just avoid short term, like we're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, oh, I have to do that, blah blah blah, then what happens in the long run is we've procrastinated so long that time has passed.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate and it's sad, and I don't ever want to blame any parents at all in any way, because we're all overwhelmed and we all do the best we absolutely can. There's a million things I would have done differently with my kids as well if I had the opportunity. But it is what it is. And like, you have a 3-year-old, for this particular viewer, get on the ball and get your 40 hours right now.
Make up your mind. I always loved the phrase, if you're going after Moby Dick, pack the tartar sauce.
Yeah.
And there were times in my life when I would go out and buy a jar of tartar sauce and put it up on the shelf to remind me, we're going after Moby Dick.
That's a great one.
The tartar sauce is there because we're going to need it, because we're going to get there.
Because we're going to win.
We're going to get there. Doesn't matter. You are going to meet obstacles. But it's like, oh, and you know what it does? It quiets everything down in your mind. You go, oh, there's an obstacle. Not like, whoa, is me. Why is this happening? Because that was happening to me for a while. And then I went, oh, nope, we're doing this. Okay, do we have time? We have time. We got 5 minutes. We got time for one more question. And they're all good. But you know what? This is a short one. My daughter has autism and just got braces. She needs to have 4 teeth pulled. She will be under anesthesia due to sensory issues. Which form of anesthesia is better, an IV shot or gas anesthesia?
I don't think it's, first of all, I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. I don't have experience with this. This is not my field of education.
Okay.
And I don't think that it will matter. I think that both experiences initially might be a little bit scary for her. And whether you do the shot or the gas, you probably want to prep her. We've done a lot of training for people on how to prep medical procedures, and it starts with just literally driving to the doctor's office where she's going to have the procedure and going up and maybe getting a candy and then coming down, so that she doesn't get scared on the day the procedure is happening. If she's going to get an actual IV, we actually go to the point of practicing putting a tourniquet on, using a pen, that sort of just to show her the process. Because honestly, if you get her to the point of an actual needle, like to the point, like you practice everything and you do put a tourniquet on and you do something like just this or wherever they're gonna, like, learn what they're gonna do and mimic it all the way to almost the end, right, where the actual needle is. It will help. And then what you're doing is you do those steps. This is called systematic desensitization procedures. You do each step and you reinforce it and you pair it with calming, like music, headphones, something that will help her be calm. That will be very helpful. Having said that, gas anesthesia is often very scary for kids too, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what this is. They don't know the feeling. I mean, I remember when I was anesthetized for my tonsils, I was like 3 or 4 years old in England, and I remember they told me count backwards, right? And I was nervous that I wouldn't be able to count backwards, right? You just don't know what is the... So, I think that you just need to kind of familiarize your child with the process when she gets there. And then, of course, I'm sure that your dentist or surgical dentist will be able to give you a lot of feedback on which one is better for your child's particular physiology. One of our old parents is a really good dentist, Susie Kaplan, Dr. Susie Kaplan. I think she has multiple practices in California. Look her up. She focuses on individuals with autism. So she would be a wonderful person to have a conversation with.
I think I'll call her and see if she'd be willing to do the show.
Yeah, you know who she is, right?
No.
She's Andy's mom.
Oh,
yeah.
Fabulous. All right, well, we'll reach out to her and see
she's
if
excellent. She's
she'd
awesome.
be willing to come and be on the show.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hi, you're back at Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman, and you're at the allergy-friendly cooking show. And we have kind of an interesting surprise. I've brought my sister. That's surprise number one.
Yeah. The fact that I came is surprise number two.
I know, right?
Hi, Jamie. Hi.
And we're doing one of my favorite recipes, an ode to Sue, a Taka super mom. She created a kid-friendly sushi recipe for her son, Zach. So hi, Zach. Thanks for allowing us to borrow your lunch recipe because it's really awesome. So we can't wait to show it to you. First, what I'm going to do is we're going to cut up some of these things so we can get ready. I'm going to take an organic cucumber and just make some slices of this that we're going to use in a little bit to add some extra textures to the seaweed roll that we're going to do. And I'm just making long slices so we can place this in our sushi later on. And then I got, of course, a nitrate-free, gluten-free, fantastic sausage. Love this. So this is a barbecue chicken that we had last night. It was pretty awesome. Make sure that I have a little bit of everything here for the sushi roll. So now let's make the sauce. Use my gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free soy sauce. And of course, my most favorite thing in the world is crushed ginger. Love this stuff.
I thought that was garlic at first.
No, you can actually do
buy it that way.
this. Ginger is just such a blessing for digestion. So I just made this quick sauce, super easy. So here's my cooked rice. This rice is very, very sticky. I use this really great little water and apple cider vinegar combination just to keep my hands. That's what the sushi chefs do, is a little trick, which is like pretty.
They're used for apple cider.
I know, and I love that stuff. So good for you. So all I'm doing is just keeping my fingers a little bit damp so the rice doesn't stick to my fingers. And we're just pushing this all through. If your kids don't like green, not a problem. You just flip it over. So that way we can hide the green stuff from our kids and it will be rice out as part of the recipe. So let's have a little fun. We're gonna do my favorite, avocado. And if you're sending this to lunch with your kids, you may want to put a little extra of the lemon on there because it will get brown. And I even have sensory issues for the brown stuff. So there we go. There's our avocado. So the next thing I'm going to do is do a couple of the cucumbers. I know, it's so easy and it's so cute and we're going to eat healthy.
You're going to make one for me for lunch today.
Yes,
right?
you can have one for lunch. Now comes the fun stuff, the sausage.
So you could put anything in here.
Anything.
Jeez.
Anything. It's really just the simplest thing in the entire world. And then, so, you know, it's sushi kids can eat, and I wasn't joking about that. So I may squeeze a little more extra lemon on there. And now I'm going to take my little sausage, or sauce, excuse me. Just put a little bit on there so we're coating. About a teaspoon. Doesn't it look good? You can get this at any cooking food store. So this is just the little sushi roller, which I think is fun. So I'm going to put this underneath, and I'm going to start to roll. So you got to watch how you go through and roll this. So the biggest thing is to try to get it compacted enough. So when all is said and done, we can hide the green stuff. So again, with cutting sushi, you want to make sure your knife's really sharp. And we also want to get it a little wet because that way it would make it easier for cutting. So I'm going to just cut off the ends. It's so funny. These are our taster bites, Jamie. You can tell me how these taste. Go ahead and try it.
Yum.
I know, right?
See?
And your body kind of goes, wait, I'm waiting for seafood. But you've got awesome sausage, chicken. You've got a full serving of vegetables. And is that good? Yeah. Yum? You're not lying? You're not lying? Okay, good.
I like more sauce.
You like more
We
sauce?
can even put wasabi in there if you like.
Yeah, if, you know, I think the wasabi, the issue.
Oh, we're making it for kids, sorry.
Yeah, we are making it for kids. This is just a fun way to introduce more foods to your kids, and notice they're eating seaweed. We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea or you want us to convert a recipe, let us know. Jamie, thanks for being my fabulous Flannel White. You can reach us at autismlive@gmail.com or Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. Or we have thousands of recipes on Taka Now. So go check out the TACA website and let's get cooking. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism. I'm Nancy Allspot Jackson, and I have with me Shannon. I don't know if they heard you.
I said, and I'm Shannon Penrod.
Yeah, Shannon's with us via phone today because she is traveling. She's on the road doing some work. Shannon, tell us what you're up to out there. You're coming to us from Vancouver, Washington.
Yes, I am. We just got into Vancouver, Washington just a few minutes ago, and we've been up here the last couple of days in Portland and last night in Salem, Oregon. And today we're going to be in Vancouver all day long. Right now we are at a card center in Vancouver, and it's bustling. Boy, this place is hopping. All kinds of things are happening here. It's so exciting. The energy when you walk in the door and you see all these kids learning and having fun. It's very exciting. So we're up here. Jem and I both are up here, and we're meeting with therapists and we're meeting with families. This card has something called the PTA, which stands for Parents That Are Truly Amazing, and we meet on a regular basis to support each other. So I'm up here doing some PTA meetings, and we're also doing some workshop performances, invited-only performances of autism monologues, and you can hear it in my voice. I've been talking so much that my voice is about a full octave lower than it normally is, but we're having a really good time. It's so beautiful up here, Nancy, and I'll tell you what, the air is so crisp and clean. It smells like Christmas trees up here.
Oh, lovely.
So we're enjoying it thoroughly and having a great time meeting families and their kiddos and seeing their kiddos make improvement. It just warms my heart.
That's great. Well, how long are you on the road for?
We'll be back in the Los Angeles area on Saturday. So
Okay.
It's just a week that we're up here, and it's not long enough. It's not long enough, but we're having a really good time.
Okay, good. We're glad to hear it. Well, you want to start? We've got some in the news stories. You want to start with that?
Yeah, let's dive right in because there's some pretty. I have to say, almost all of it. We're going to start with the less positive thing, but almost all of it is positive.
Yeah, there's an article from Spectrum News that's titled "Faulty Use of Data Threatens Early Intervention for Autism." You want to explain what that's about?
Yeah, it's so important that we are all being vigilant and making sure that the rights that are put into place by IDEA are protected. And two very important people, a professor at the University of Miami and an associate professor at the University of Colorado, have raised a concern that they're seeing a trend, that there is a way that we are, all of our kids that have developmental disabilities are entitled under IDEA Section C to get early intervention before the age of 3, and that's paid for under that Part C. But part of the way that they judge who can deliver that treatment is that they have to show that they're effective. Well, that makes sense, right? We all want to take our kids to places that are effective.
Right.
But they're taking issue with the way they're judging whether it's effective. Because what we've noticed over the years is that kiddos on the autism spectrum all can learn. It just takes them a little while longer.
Mm-hmm.
And that because these interventions end at the age of 3, there isn't a whole lot of time when the kids are diagnosed with autism that they're in these interventions. And so what we're seeing is because the way they're evaluating these places, they're starting to give them low evaluations if they have a bunch of kids with autism, because those kids are going to take longer to learn, and so it drags their scores down. And the fallout from that is that we're seeing that some places are saying they don't want to take kids with autism because their score is going to go down. That means that there's less places for us to take our kiddos and get services before 3 and have them paid for under that particular program. We don't want that. That would be a very bad thing for autism, and it's not really a fair judge. So all these two professors are doing is raising an alarm, saying that we should all be aware of it, and we should all be lobbying for the scale that decides whether those early start programs are effective, takes into consideration kiddos with autism and the fact that it's going to take them longer. It doesn't mean it's less effective, and it's not throwing away the whole rating system, because we want to make sure that somebody's checking up and making sure that it's effective. But it's saying, please make room for the fact that our kids are going to take a little bit longer to get to that progress. And I think that's super duper important.
And how can parents go about lobbying for that, though?
Well, that's a good question. This article had come to us from Spectrum News, and it lists the two professors, Bataya Album, the professor at University of Miami, and Steve Rosenberg, associate professor, at the University of Colorado. So I don't know whether we reach out to them. I'm certainly going to be looking into that because this concerns me. We don't want to see an end to early start programs for our kiddos on the spectrum.
Right. Okay. All right. Once again, that was from Spectrum News, and if you want to check that out and read it more in depth, please go ahead and do so. We have some feel-good stories today for In the News. We have, there was a Boy Scout who was missing, 13-year-old Boy Scout, who was missing after he went hiking he was separated from his group for nearly a day and a half in Wyoming, Garrett Hunter, and he was found by a group of volunteers about 1 mile from his campsite.
And amazing, some of the lengths that this youngster went to keep himself safe. We talk a lot about the fact that Boy Scouts is highly recommended for our kids on the spectrum. That it's a wonderful way for them to make friends. It's a wonderful way for them to learn skills. It gives parents time for them to be someplace else that isn't necessarily respite, but it is respite. You're not paying for it. And the skills that they learn can be life-saving, clearly, from this 13-year-old who was able to spend that amount of time by himself.
Yes, he had a sleeping bag, food, and a water filter, and was able to maintain, survive and do quite well.
Yeah, so so grateful that he has been found. I know that his family is probably heaving a huge sigh of relief, as are that entire troop of Boy Scouts. I can't imagine how traumatic it was for all of them, plus for Garrett. But that he is safe, we're all really, really grateful. I'll tell you, too, what this brought up for me, Nancy. We talk a lot about when our kids are lost or elope or wander.
Right.
And I don't know if you've seen in the news the last couple of days, Bodie Miller, who was the Olympic skier.
Yes, whose daughter had the tragic drowning accident. They lost their little girl.
But he and his wife have come forward in the last few days and been speaking out, along with another mom, about death by drowning. And of course, you know from Act Today, this is a cause that you've been sounding an alarm about for a really long time.
Right. It's the number one cause of death, not only in children with autism, but also in all children, I think, ages 1 to 4, they were saying.
And for the first time on the news the other day, I saw newscasters in covering this story talking about the fact that you can be so vigilant, but it doesn't matter if we all look away at some point. And while I hate this story, my heart bleeds for the Miller family. I am encouraged that the news is covering this story in a way that reminds all of us that no one can be just vigilant.
Right.
That there are other things that have to be in place. And, and hearing about this 13-year-old that, he stepped away and nobody saw it. I mean, it's amazing how it can happen. But I know that that's been very near and dear to your heart, and that Act Today does so many things to help with those kinds of issues.
Yes, we have grants for tracking devices and for fences and for also for swimming lessons. We've had programs for that. I think it's really important, as you said, not to focus. This is not bad parenting. This is,
right.
It's a far more complex issue than that.
Right. So you want to talk about these emotional support ducks, Nancy? Because this got me a little riled up.
Yes, this Michigan boy with autism was told to give up his emotional support ducks, but his parents say they calm his anxiety. This was in Newsweek. About a young boy, Dylan Dyke, who is 12. And Dylan has mothered 2 ducks named Nibbles and Bill for 2 years. And his parents...
Don't you just want to write a children's book about Nibbles and Bill?
Nibbles and Bill. Yeah, I know. And they basically follow Dylan wherever he goes. And his parents, Mark and Jen, says he relies on them now to navigate to cope with his emotion and autism-specific anxieties. But apparently, duck neighbors have begun to complain that the ducks had strayed onto their property, defecated in their yards, left a lingering smell. And now the officials in Michigan's Georgetown Township told the families they violated local zoning ordinances that prohibit residents from keeping exotic pets, which I don't know that ducks are exotic pets, but I guess that they're saying
I've never
so.
thought of a duck as being exotic myself.
Right.
But this story just goes completely off the rails into, looking at, okay, well, can they have the ducks? Can they not have the ducks? But I want to go back to common sense. That people placed the complaints, which is why the ordinance has been brought up, and yet the family never, ever got a single complaint from anybody in their neighborhood. If we could just get back to basic civility and having conversations, I am sure that if 2 ducks came over and constantly were defecating in your lawn and it left a lingering smell, I wouldn't like it either.
Right.
But that becomes, can we just not have a conversation and go back to these people and say, hey, your duck defecated in my lawn. Look, I live in a residential neighborhood where people come by and there are doggy bags posted on trees, and no one is supposed to have their dog do anything on a lawn. They're supposed to pick it up. We always have dog poop on our lawn. And it's a reality of living with neighbors, and there have been times when I have seen a dog repeatedly do it, and I have said to that person, could you please use the bag to pick it up? And they don't do it, and life goes on. But for somebody to actually get to the point where they're filing complaints saying you have to get rid of the ducks,
Right.
And maybe they don't know that they're emotional support ducks, but then when you do know, can you just take a moment, take a breath, and think about what's more important? That this little boy, and he's already lost one duck and been devastated.
Yes, he
two
lost
ducks.
a
These are not
duck.
elephants.
He lost a duck before middle school, and they said that it just completely devastated him, and was very, very upsetting. And so now he got these other two ducks. And by the way, emotional support animals like Bill and Nibbles are protected by the Fair Housing Act, which requires landlords to allow assistance pets with or without certification to live with their owners, even on property that prohibits household pets. So,
and they're considered different from service animals. So there are fewer rights that they have. But this has become, apparently, this is a hot topic, not just because of ducks, but because people have now started trying to take their emotional support animals on planes with them. And there have been incidents. This is where I say it goes completely off the rails. There have been incidents. Apparently 85 incidents since 2016 when they started allowing passengers to take emotional support animals on planes. That people have taken turkeys, sugar gliders, which I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of that in my life. Kangaroos, snakes, and spiders onto planes. And I get it. I mean, at what point do you go, okay, now that's ridiculous? Finally, they made a decision that if you had hooves, you could not come on a plane because there were people who wanted to take small ponies on planes.
Actually, the miniature horses, which are used for the blind, are accepted from that. They can be allowed.
So, but where does the small miniature horse sit on the plane?
I guess it stands in the aisle. I don't know.
How do people get? How do they get the drink cart by?
I really don't know.
And you see why people get caught up in this. Well, can they have? Can they not have? But it's two ducks. It is not two elephants. I'm just saying common sense here.
Right, common sense, and this little boy, Dylan Dyke, definitely needs them for his emotional support. So we'll see how this controversy unfolds. Hopefully it'll result in him being able to keep the ducks.
And somebody please write a children's book called Nibbles and Bill, because if they don't, I'm going to have to. It's too cute.
It is too cute. Okay.
Too cute.
And we had one other story about a brother who started a petition to change UT, which I suppose is University of Texas.
It's Tennessee.
Oh, it's University of Tennessee.
I thought the same thing, and I looked it up. It's Tennessee.
Okay, great. Yeah. To allow his twin brother with autism to live in a dorm, because there was the program. The program is presently 2-year and non-residential. So a young man.
The thing I found really sweet about this is that the brother. I just love autism siblings. They're some of the best people on the face of the earth. And this brother has stepped up repeatedly to make sure that his brother was included all through grade school and junior high and high school. And now they're both at college, but big brother is staying in a dorm room, and little brother has been told that he can't, even though he's a student there and he's in a program that's there. And UT is saying, look, this program has a mission, and to date, it has been a mission where we don't have residential services and we don't have support. But Big Brother is saying, well, maybe you should look at that. Maybe it should be something different. And UT has agreed to look at it and see if it's feasible, if it would be good for the students, and if they can do it. I just think these are the ways that the world changes, and that the legacy that these two brothers are going to leave behind, I think they're going to be successful in talking UT into this at some point. Maybe it takes them a while, but the legacy will be that there will be more kids who will be able to live on campus. In 10 years from now, we're going to look back and it's just going to be like, well, of course you can go to UT and stay on campus and be in the dorms and be included. And won't that be a great thing?
And there's a change.org petition, by the way, on this.
And because we do want people to put pressure on UT to see that, and case by case, maybe everyone can't live on campus, but if somebody can, and if they can be accommodated, that would be a worthwhile thing. That would add to that campus, because we're always trying to make college campuses be a microcosm for the world. And if you don't have individuals on the autism spectrum staying and living on that campus, you're not really getting it done, are you?
No, you're not. So
There
you
we
can
go.
join that on change.org, the petition. Mike Kretich is the brother, Miles Kretich. And you can support that by going on change.org, on the change.org petition, which I believe we have up. Samantha
Fabulous.
has up, right.
Now, you and
Okay.
I have pre-recorded some interviews that we want to show the audience.
We
today. Can you
have.
talk a
We've
little
got
bit about-
we've got some great guests today. We've got AJ Perone-Wilds, who is really a design expert in the field of autism. So she's going to talk about that. And then later we have a young actor by the name of Jacob Lentz, who is drawing a lot of attention for his performance in a new film called Nathan's Kingdom. And Jacob himself is on the autism spectrum, and he plays a young man with autism. So first we're going to take a quick break, and we come back. We will be with AJ Perone-Wilds talking about interior design for those on the spectrum. So stay with us.
Inclusion is everything. Feeling like we have a place where we belong, and when I say we, I'm first and foremost a mother of a child on the spectrum and gym owner and now founder of carrying this to families who need it as well.
My son is extremely hyperactive. Getting him to calm down is a very difficult task. So the idea of Rock the Spectrum Gym, where he could just go and run and play and do all these fun things without any kind of worries and just go, go, go and bring down that energy, it helps us so much at home. You know, in the home or at school, it's not acceptable, but this is the one place it is acceptable for the child to kind of be themselves and get it all out there and just really just be themselves.
It's an amazing place where my son could go and be himself. You get to meet other parents who are in the same journey as you are.
I think the most popular aspect of it is how they include all children of all types, not just only learning disabled, lower functioning, moderate functioning, high functioning, and non-disabled.
The people there are so friendly. Everybody's like family. They always greet you with a smile. There's not one negative thing I could say about any of the employees. They're all absolutely amazing. So I think every parent should walk in through those doors and see what an amazing gym it is.
Now a diagnosis being 1 out of 6 kids are in some way or form affected with sensory processing disorder or autism. That's why We Rock Now is on the rise. People want to be a part of it. People know that they have a community there. They know that they can learn more information about things that they don't know themselves or that they can share, build friendships, and basically get what you get in an OT facility, but it's not $150 an hour. It's $12.
Hello, activists. Let's talk about step 7. Recognize your gifts and abilities. Whatever gifts and abilities you had before autism entered your life, you have them now. And I bet you've developed some that you didn't even know you had. Those gifts and abilities are going to help you in your journey of parenting a child with autism spectrum disorders. Maybe you're a born researcher, teacher, negotiator, or organizer. Well, you're going to need all of those talents. And you could find a whole new calling. That's what happened to me. If you had told me 20 years ago that I was going to leave behind a career as a television producer to work as an autism advocate and activist, I would have said, you're nuts. If you don't think you have any special gifts or abilities, ask someone who loves you. They'll tell you what they are. I guarantee you, you have them. What's your special gift? Find it, use it, for yourself, for your child, for the good of all concerned. Until next time, keep the faith.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, and now we are joined by a special guest. We have AJ Perone-Wilds, who is an interior designer, a national architectural and design manager, in fact.
with
Welcome to the
great
show.
experience with designing for autism, and is also an autism mom.
Yes.
So many different things that we want to talk about with you, but maybe we should start with autism mom.
Yeah.
Were you a designer first and then became an autism mom? Did
Yes.
that sort of, help push you towards design for autism?
I actually wanted to be an interior designer since I was in 8th grade. So
Wow.
I was one of those people that just was really driven and passionate about design and was an overachiever in college and was doing everything, and actually was given a company to run at 25.
Wow.
So it was
a design company.
Yeah, a design build company. So I had a lot of experience, but my thesis in school was actually designing for Alzheimer's. And so I had studied so much about the psychological ramifications of the environment on other mental health issues. So when my son was diagnosed about age 3, I immediately thought, well, there must be tons of research on this. There must be, book loads of evidence-based research, and there was none.
Yeah, I was going to say,
zero.
and then when you found out that you were going to pioneer that area, was that exciting to you, or was that daunting?
It was really daunting, but I luckily had amazing mentors. There's actually doctorates of interior design, and I know most all of them.
Okay.
And a few doctors of interior design really encouraged me. They said, you can do this. Someone needs to do this, and it might as well be you.
So you just kind of took the lead in designing for autism.
Yes, I really started looking at the neural functions of what's happening in the brain, and one of the first books I read that made me think, wow, there is something here, was Temple Grandin's Thinking in Pictures.
Right.
And understanding how she looked at the environment and what she was experiencing and how different it was. And as an interior designer, you design for the 5 senses, but you design for what it's like for you, right? It's your experience. And so what I've had to do is teach people design empathy. What is it like for someone else to experience that color or that brightness, or how is that receptive to them? And it might be completely different than it is in your own experience.
So I'm curious, when you're dealing with a client who wants to make a space that's more autism friendly, what are some tips and tricks that you give them to make it more inclusive?
So it's interesting because it's changed over the years. The first 10 years we were trying to get people to minimize things and be able to control the environment, right? Whether it's color or lighting
so
or
less
acoustics.
sensory input.
Yes, and because think about it, everything designed for a child is in primary colors,
right?
Which is, for 90% of the kids with autism, is the worst thing in the world.
Absolutely.
And so it's really hard to take color off of walls and the environments, but it's much easier to have a blank slate and then add things and then being able to take them down. So it's trying to change that philosophy so it doesn't look like Ronald McDonald came in there and threw up.
Right,
right. So it's simplifying it. But then we actually had the challenge of, because everything was so simplified, it started to look institutional.
Yes.
And the families, like the mothers and the fathers and the grandparents, didn't like their child going to a place that felt like an institution. And the therapist actually had a hard time doing that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel warm and gushy to
Right.
them.
And they need the stimuli,
Right.
whereas these kids don't.
Right.
And so what we've had to do is figure out how to balance that framework and making sure that it is stimulating for the other caregivers and the therapists in certain areas where it's okay to have that, or it's not primary for therapy to be happening there, or something really pivotal. And so they have enough stimuli that it makes them feel good that they're there.
Absolutely.
And then it's still controlled for the individuals that need that therapy.
Now, we have some pictures of some of the spaces that you've worked on, and so talk to us a little bit about, tell us what we're seeing.
Well, this is a home environment, and it was interesting. It was for a little boy, and you can tell by the picture the color of the room. We changed it from yellow stripes to a light pink. Now this took the father of the little boy was not excited. But some of this came from the research of, I don't know if you've ever heard of the prison research studies on color, that they painted all these prison cells different colors and found that this very subtle pink color was the one that actually kept people most calm.
Really?
And so through a lot of other research, that warm kind of taupey not Pepto-Bismol pink, but
Right.
but something that's very pastel and muted and more in the warm tones. The children tend to do better on that. So it's also
And it
simplifying.
looks like you simplified quite
Yes,
a bit.
yes.
So there wasn't as much sensory input,
Right. And then there's the toxicology standpoint.
Okay.
When you're looking at the environment and you're looking at all these kids have, allergy issues
Yes.
and dust mites and things like that. And so, using like 100% wool, unless the child's allergic to wool,
Right.
or cotton, and simplifying it, but also making sure that they're not getting any VOCs from the environment that's going to make them worse.
Yeah, I think we've all gotten so used to like when things come and they have a stench to it, a
Right,
chemical stench.
right.
I went to buy a pair of shoes, designer shoes that were athletic shoes, and I opened the box and the smell that wafted off of them. I said I had to get on a plane, and I said they're not going to let me on the plane with this.
Right.
They smell like they're going to catch fire. And the people in the store were like, "Oh, that's what all the shoes smell like."
Right.
And I
Yeah.
said, "No, they don't. Open this one. It doesn't smell that
Yeah.
way." We shouldn't be putting things in our
No.
kids' rooms
So you
that have that smell.
You take that into effect too.
Absolutely. And I'm a designer that is a LEED accredited professional, which is
What does that mean?
LEED is Leadership for Energy and Environmental Design. And so I've really helped push the toxicology effects on human beings. And I have to say, like corporate environments and hospitals and all these other commercial regulated interiors, you could eat a lot of the furniture and stuff now. It's so we're so vigilant on the types of adhesives we're using, the paint we're using, but that doesn't always translate into the home environment and things like the toy industry or the manufacturers for home goods. It doesn't always. We're not at that same level of diligence yet.
I love that you take that into consideration. So it's environmentally good, and from a toxicology perspective, clean for the kiddos, because that's important for their little immune systems. Okay, let's go back to the picture.
Some other pictures.
Well, let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
So this is nothing I designed, but this is one of the things that I show a lot of people. This is a visual wayfinding board at the National History Museum in New York, and it's not there anymore because they changed all to iPads. But what I loved about it, that's actually my son.
Wow.
Being able to use actual pictures or PEC symbols or things in the environment for wayfinding, we do a lot of that because it really helps that individual understand where they're going. And so for, even if you don't speak English, which they have a lot of visitors that are not speaking English, they can go, oh, I want to go see the mummies. I go to floor 3 and here I go. And he could figure it out. Anybody could. So it's looking at, how do people, if you're trying to make sure that these groups of individuals are as inclusive as possible, how do we look at wayfinding so that they can understand where to go in an airport or where to get a taxi or how to navigate through a building? And some of that's a safety concern too.
Absolutely.
If they can't get out of a building, that's a problem.
Now, do you design mostly for larger sites, or do you do mostly personal homes, or a combination thereof?
I've done everything. So I've done a lot of personal homes, a lot of personal spaces, classrooms, schools, entire schools, therapy clinics, everything from a private practicing doctor to a very large hospital. I'm getting a lot of requests now, and I've served in Minnesota on the Governor's Council for looking at autism and aging. And so, they can't go into a regular group home. That's not meeting their needs. And they can't go into a senior living, a typical senior living space. So how do we create these environments that are going to make sure that they're successful and that they're leading a happy life? And so it's interesting because as we see the number of kids increase, and kids that are like my son's age, 22, now we're looking at all these aging factors. And it's a different set of circumstances, but it's just as important as when they're little.
Tell us about your son today and what he's doing.
He's great. I mean, you would consider him to be severely autistic.
Really?
Yes, he is on the severe side, and
in terms of, is he nonverbal? Is
he speaks maybe 6-7 words a day.
Okay.
He's very, he's not. He can answer a question, but he's not conversational.
Okay.
And he's still not good. Like, it was super hot the other day, and he came down wearing a sweater. We're like, dude, So, and he needs a PCA. But what we've found is through technology in our home. We have cameras in our homes and we have sensors so we can see what he's doing. So now he's had a lot more independence of living in our house without us,
Right.
which is huge for him.
Yeah, and huge for you too.
Yes, and he's a great traveler. And I think that's one of the things I learned from the design aspect is, you know, kids need their schedules, but sometimes being so adherent to it is actually not a good thing because then they can't transition into the world, right?
Right.
And when your flight gets delayed, they melt down. And I call it like an environmental stimuli diet. So at one point in his life when he was 4 and 5, we couldn't take him out of the house. You couldn't take him into a retail store. You couldn't take him to the grocery store because he would just freak out. And my husband was like, well, let's just keep him at home. And I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
You know, I am a person that goes lots of different places and doesn't do the same thing at all every day.
Right.
So this kid's got to learn how to deal with it. And so we would start in going to places, and he would maybe last, you know, at a children's museum 10 minutes. But we kind of figured out some ways to maybe make him do better, and we'd go back and we'd try it again, and we'd give motivation. And to the point where, you know, by the time he was 10, I could fly him to Hawaii, and he wouldn't get upset if the plane wasn't on time, and he sits in a 5-star restaurant, no problem. I mean, he knows how to navigate in the real world.
And now he travels and speaks.
Yes, tell us about that. He's speaking?
He does speak when he's in front of an audience.
And how did you discover that?
It was one of those things that I had done a few political rallies for autism awareness and things like that, and I'd get him to come on stage and say one sentence, and he just loved it. And so I got a call to this wonderful organization called Peace Love that creates a mental health awareness through art. And so it's a lot about art therapy. And they said, hey, would you come and talk about autism and art? Because we know your son loves to do art. And I said, well, sure, I can come and talk, but why don't we get him to talk? And they went, great idea. And I said, okay, let me tell you something. He really doesn't talk. So this could be a disaster. And actually, the rehearsal was a disaster.
Right.
But when he got out there and he saw the audience and he saw how they reacted to him, he was like, this is my calling.
What does he have to say when he talks?
He loves it. He talks about his art.
Okay.
He doesn't identify that there's anything wrong with him.
Right.
He doesn't think he has any type of disability, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, he thinks he's an artist, and he is. He's an amazing artist. And he sells his work, and it's getting put in a lot of healthcare organizations.
Okay, great.
You know, large organizations that treat kids like ours.
Right.
And so he's really been making a name for himself. But he loves the bigger the audience, the better.
That's
no fear.
Fantastic.
I absolutely love it.
Great.
Can we look at a couple more of the pictures, Samantha? There was one you were showing that was from Fraser.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about this. Tell us a little bit about Fraser.
So Fraser does autism therapy. It's the premier autism therapy center in Minnesota, and we're just building their new Woodbury clinic. This was one of the smaller sites, so they're up to about 7 sites now in the metro area. And this, you can see there's lots of bright colors and lots of things going on, but the therapy environments are actually very neutralized. They're very, very controlled. We're using a lot of natural sunlight through solo tubes, but very, not a lot of color, hardly any pattern, so that the therapist can bring that in when they need to.
Sure.
But the waiting room, that's actually the Mind Institute. But the waiting room, we added in a lot more color, and that was more helpful for you know, the parents and how they felt their child coming.
So this is the Mind Institute.
So this is the Mind
Institute, which is in Sacramento.
Yes, and it was interesting because we were actually patients of the old center, and then the architecture firm called me and said, hey, could you help us on this? I'm like, we're actually patients. And so we had really bad experiences. Yeah, we had really bad experiences in the old hospital. And so I'm like, let me tell you the places that need to get fixed. And so the new building had to not only be receptive to children with autism and their families, but also researchers. We're trying to get the best and the brightest and stealing them from, you know, AIDS research and cancer research. And they need to feel like they're going to a beautiful place. So that is the lounge that you first walk into, and you can see there's hardly any pattern on the flooring because that can be problematic for kids walking through the space. We're using a lot of natural materials, a lot of natural light, which natural light is really, really important. If they can go to the next slide, I think we're going through, there we go, the waiting room. Waiting rooms can be very traumatic for
Yeah.
families that are coming in, especially if they don't have a diagnosis yet.
Yes.
And it's not just a mother and a child, it's like the grandparents are there.
Yeah.
And so we created these pods for the families to sit in for a good portion of the day. And it's actually looking out onto a secure courtyard. So if the kids have a half an hour break while they're interviewing the parents, the kids can be out in the courtyard running around and doing vestibular activity. Right?
Lovely.
And that was January, so that's why it doesn't look so pretty.
Well,
but
no, it's very pretty.
Better than Minnesota in
Not
January.
as lush as we're used to in California, but it looks very pretty.
Yeah.
Well, fascinating work. I mean, really interesting what you're doing. And
Where can people find more information?
So one of the things that I did is I wrote 3 books.
Okay.
Because
in your spare time.
Yeah, in my spare time. It was help funded by ASID, which is American Society of Interior Designers, and I had so many requests coming in, and I've been very, very generous with all my research because to me it's about getting the information out. There's more projects that I could ever look at, and I also do. Right now, I'm focused on commercial design and workplace. And that keeps me sane, you know. And there's ties between the two.
Of course.
But I can't do autism all the time.
Right.
It's actually not healthy for me.
Right.
So writing these books was one way to get the information out, and it's written in a way that there's the scientific and the very like textbook information. So if you're an architect or designer, you know what I'm talking about. And then on the other side, there's the personal stories and actual stories of actual clients that parents can really relate to. So it kind of has 2 sides to it.
So how can people find those?
It's pretty easy. That's Interior Design for Autism, and you go on Amazon. They're all ebooks, but they're based on age range. So because the individuals need different things at different ages. So birth through age 5, and then kind of the school age years, and then from early adulthood to geriatric.
Okay. Wonderful. And all available on Amazon.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for coming and being with us today. This was really fun.
Thanks for having me.
Eye-opening.
It was.
Wonderful.
And congratulations on how well your son is doing.
Oh, thank you.
That's a wonderful thing. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy after these messages.
Neurodiversity in parents. One big happy family? We hope so. Anyway, what is neurodiversity? Everybody's talking a lot about it these days. Neurodiversity means that there's a view that people with autism just have a different way of being, and they should be honored for that. And then parents oftentimes look at autism as a disability or a disorder, and that can create some conflict. We sometimes throw up our hands, neurodiversity or neurodiversity. There can actually be some issues around this that we need to think about together. First of all, neurodiversity could be positive because it can create more of kind of a sense of acceptance in society. Yes, these people have autism, they're just different. It could possibly help create a sense of self-esteem that's improved in people with autism. They just realize, okay, I'm not damaged, I'm not bad, whatever, I'm just different. So that could be useful. On the downside, it could be an excuse to not give services to people with autism, to not have much empathy for their parents, and to not look at ways that they can be helped. And in many people that have autism, they do very well. Other people do not do well at all. They can't access services. They cannot enjoy their life. They're in pain. So it is important that we understand it's not just one issue. So how do we solve this when we look at neurodiversity? I think we have to look at it this way. It's kind of like when you have that big family dinner at Thanksgiving and everybody's around the table. You got your uncle, your aunt, your kids, your parents. Everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mesh. And I think the way that we need to think about this is we need to respect each other's opinion, because actually we need each other. We need to be allies on this. The outside world is a big place for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. We have to remember we're one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and we need to behave that way. We should respect each other, listen to each other, and we will all have a great time when it comes time to get together and celebrate the lives of people with autism.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got a great guest.
Yes, we do. We're here with actor Jacob Lentz. Welcome, Jacob. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Jacob is the lead role in a new film called Nathan's Kingdom. Tell us about what Nathan's Kingdom is all about, Jacob.
So the premise of Nathan's Kingdom is about basically finding peace and finding safety. The main character is Nathan. He is a person on the autistic spectrum, and basically he and his younger sister have gone through a lot when they were younger. Their dad left them very young, and at some point their mother died. And basically his sister told him about this place called the Kingdom, where everything's safe and happy and where you can feel better about yourself. And 10 years on, they're living on their own, trying to sustain themselves, but Nathan still thinks about the Kingdom.
Okay.
And so he wants to basically go and find the Kingdom in order to avoid social services, which want him to be in a group home.
Okay.
And basically it's just their sort of physical but also very personal journey about finding this kingdom and trying to find some peace and some just be able to feel better again.
Right, okay.
And the film raises some really, I think, topical and interesting questions about what happens when parents aren't there to take care of individuals. There's also a running theme. There's some addiction. That's the opiate addiction in the sister. So a lot there to deal with. How did you come to be on this film? What was the process for you to get cast as this role?
So I'm with an organization called Performing Arts Studio West. That's PASW for short. And basically they teach acting, singing, and dancing for people with disabilities. And they also look for them to have opportunities in film and to show off their talents as well. And the director also was looking for someone on the spectrum to play the role for his film.
Okay.
And I was there that day. I was relatively new to PASW, and he gave me the script to audition with. And I think I gave a lot into my performance that day, and he really liked it, and everything just sort of clicked from there.
Yeah, so you were chosen from about 200 other actors who are both neurotypical and on the spectrum, and you yourself are on the autism spectrum?
Yeah. I was diagnosed a few years after I was born.
Okay. All right. And you've been involved with a lot of different performing groups that work with actors on the spectrum, correct?
Yeah, so when I was 15 was about the time that I thought about being an actor. I joined this group called the Miracle Project,
Right.
which is another one of those organizations that shows people with autism and other disabilities.
Right. We're very familiar with the Miracle Project.
Yeah. Yeah.
We know Coach Elaine, Coach E.
Yeah.
And so you worked with them when you were a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started getting involved in other groups for acting?
Yeah, I was, I found a summer theater group for people from like ages from like teens to preteens. It's called Delightful Productions. And I was able to be in a production of Beauty and the Beast and one for Pirates of Penzance, which was pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
But this has got to have been a whole other thing to be a lead character in a film, and this film is beautifully shot and looks like it has a substantial budget. There's a element to the film of this mystical fantasy world, and it's beautiful when we get to see aspects of that. What was it like being on the set and having the responsibility of being a lead role?
Yeah, it was really cool for me. I really think that I had a great time being able to work on my first film, and the story was really exciting. I thought that being able to play this character was very interesting to me, and the sets were great. We got to shoot out in Lone Pine, where there's like a lot of mountains.
Right.
And definitely a lot of exercise into it. Yeah.
Why don't we look at the clip?
Yeah,
Just
let's
as a
take
trailer.
a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Laura, do I have a kingdom?
Yes.
Will you help me find my kingdom?
I will never stop looking for it.
Being a younger sister, I wouldn't know what that's like.
Where were you, Laura? I hate you! I don't really think you know what you're doing. I think you need special care. Please.
Nathan, open the door.
People have been abandoning Nathan and I our whole lives. I'm not going to do the same to him.
I have to believe that things will get better.
You need a big brother to protect you. I want to find the kingdom. This will solve everything.
I'm not afraid of you! You can't keep me from my kingdom!
Nathan! Nathan!
Beautiful film, really
Absolutely.
visually stunning.
And clearly, amazing work on your part. How much of those emotional scenes, how much of that was, because some directors are very hands-on and try to get you into a state, and others just sort of stand back and let you do your work. What was it like on this set for you?
There was definitely a lot of preparation for the more emotional parts. I think what I gave on set was definitely what it needed to be.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident about how it came out.
What are the differences between this role, this character, and you personally, Jacob? You're both on the spectrum, but that by all means doesn't mean that you're alike.
Yeah, I think there's certainly different experiences with everyone on the spectrum.
Right.
And I think with Nathan, he's very willing to express himself more and really less afraid of what people think of him.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that anyone can definitely learn from, but definitely if you're dealing with something like Nathan, or if you're just going through life, I think Nathan certainly is the kind of person you like to think about.
So it's interesting because as we've talked to other actors who they're on the spectrum and they play somebody who's on the spectrum, a lot of times that actor might be verbal but be playing somebody who's nonverbal. But you're saying that Nathan actually likes to communicate more than you do in real life? Is that what you're trying to say? Was that hard?
I think it came a little easier than I thought it would. It's all about really like letting yourself go and not thinking too much about it. Like there's a little bit of a thought process, but when you're in the moment and you're really doing everything, then I think you really start to understand what's going on in the moment and the life and just taking everything in.
That's a talented actor.
Yes,
That's what that is.
it is.
And so the film has gone to 2 festivals and been very well received. What's next for the film?
Just getting more attention for it. I think we're going to be looking for more film festivals in the future, so definitely look out for us. We're trying to really promote this project and get distribution for it as well.
Right.
And that's when distribution happens, that's when our audience will be able to see it.
Yeah.
So what can they do right now to help make that happen? Is there a Facebook page they can go to and join?
Yeah, so there's a Facebook page right now. It's called Nathan's Kingdom. You can follow it and give us a like. We post stuff a lot every single day. We also have a website right now where you can get updates about our film. And yeah, just keep looking out for us. Maybe we'll show up at other film festivals in the future. Maybe do a Google search once in a while. We're definitely out there, so.
I'll make a deal with you.
great.
If you tell us when you're going to be in a city, we'll make sure that we tell our audience to let them know. Because I think that sometimes they think it's a terrible tease. They're like, well, now I want to see the movie.
Right.
And where can I see the movie? So if you'll tell us, if you know that, say, you're going to do a screening in Philadelphia, we'll put it out and let people know that, that's where they can see it. So wonderful. And I hope you get a distribution deal soon so that we can all be watching it
At the
in all the
theaters.
places that we should be seeing
Right,
it.
right.
What's next for you as an actor?
I'm definitely looking out for other auditions. My agent at PASW is still putting me out for other things. I've also been very interested in filmmaking in general, so I've been looking for film crew gigs. I took a few classes at the film production program at West LA College, so I know a lot about lighting and camera work, and I can also be a PA and just get a lot of experience and help out with things as well.
Amazing.
Great.
And is that the direction that you want to go in with your life, be somebody both in front of and behind the camera?
It's certainly something that I've thought about. I've also been thinking about writing a script lately. I started part of a treatment, so there's some pieces coming together, and I'm definitely excited about the future.
Great. I think you have a bright future, Jacob. We're
Thank
going to
you.
keep an eye on you and watch out for you in other productions and other film roles, and good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Come back and see us again, okay?
All right.
All right, we're going to
Sounds
take a
good.
break and be back with more of Let's Talk Autism after these messages.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
when one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
And we are back with Let's Talk Autism, and I am joined by Shannon on the phone today. She's coming to us from Vancouver, Washington. Hi, Shannon.
Hi.
You're
Great
up.
interviews.
Yeah, those were. I was really, it's a pleasant surprise to see a young man with autism being cast as a character with autism, because that's not always the case.
It's a lovely, lovely thing, but I think it's the way that the entire industry is going to go now.
Yeah.
And that's a lovely thing.
Right, because there's so many great actors out there that are on the spectrum, so we hope we'll be seeing more of that.
Yes.
So how has your summer been going, Shannon?
You know, I feel like the summer has flown by. I don't know about you, but it feels like a 3-day weekend. And,
Yes.
It wasn't long enough, and I can't believe that we're already really staring down the barrel of going back to school already.
I know.
I want to bring up that next week when I'm back in the studio, we're going to be starting to talk a lot about how do we set our kids up for success going back to school. It's funny, our plans for the summer got all discombobulated and rearranged, and we've done a lot.
Right.
But, not what we planned on doing. So I guess it all evens out in the end. But you just had a great weekend away, didn't you?
Yes, we went to San Diego, and we went to we went to SeaWorld, and we went to the aircraft carrier. For some reason, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it was great. It was a great experience. Wyatt did very well. He didn't have any meltdowns, which I expected, but he didn't have them. And even though the crowds and the heat and everything, he did very well. So we had a fun time.
Well, I love it. I think it's so funny that sometimes we, our fears of what could happen are not fulfilled.
Right.
Which is a very interesting thing.
Right.
But, the fears are there because they've happened in the past.
Yes.
It's not like we're crazy for being afraid of that.
Right.
But it's good to think of it and go, yeah, but that doesn't always happen.
Yes.
And it's luscious when our kids, when we can go and do something fun and exciting and different with them, and they're in a good space to receive it. That's a very luscious thing.
Right. So I'm glad to hear you're going to be talking about some back-to-school tips in the weeks ahead, because I think as much as we dread, like, oh, summer's here, what are we going to do all summer, then we start thinking about, oh, now back-to-school is here.
Yeah.
And that's that comes with its own set of fears and trepidation about what's going to happen.
It really does, but there are some things that we can do to reduce that and to really up the success level. And one of the best things at this point in the summer, and man, I've been so aware of this week, because it's kicking me in the keister, is that we need to really gradually, not cold turkey, but gradually get back, start moving the dial back towards sleeping when we're supposed to and waking when we're supposed to. It's hard, but now is the moment to really just by 5 minutes today for everybody to go to bed 5 minutes earlier than they did last night, and then in a couple of days we'll do 5 or 10 more minutes, but before you know it we'll be back on a schedule, because those first couple of days are killer going back to school.
Yeah, it's a very important point to remember that schedules are going to change. We need to adjust slowly so it's not such a shock. But it looks like we're out of time. And so
I just want to say quickly, there is a show tomorrow. It's just the best of, because I'm up here. I'll be in Portland and Salem tomorrow.
Okay, great.
So people should tune in, and I'll be back until next week. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.